Part 1 Discovery. I grew up in Central Texas in the early 60s. At 10 years old, I was small for my age, with a high voice, slim build and delicate features. I had many friends, but I was afraid of bigger boys, and sometimes they called me a sissy. My self-image wasn't enhanced by the fact that I occasionally liked to borrow my sister's panties and try them on. There was something about the look and feel of panties that excited me. I had been caught by my mom a couple of times and felt very guilty about it. But all in all, I was a very happy kid. Summer vacations were especially fun. I spent most summers with my grandmother at her large house in the upscale Lakewood area of Dallas. My late grandfather had been very successful, and Gran took every opportunity to indulge me when I was there. I spent my days playing, exploring her large house, and swimming at the country club. In the evening, we would go out to dinner, then see a movie or watch TV. Gran was very indulgent and accepting, and I always felt very loved when I was with her. Gran had another daughter, Carolyn, much younger than my mom, who had just graduated from SMU and moved away. One day, while playing in Carolyn's old room, I discovered some of her old clothes. There was a closet full of dresses and shoes, and in her dresser I found a complete assortment of lingerie and nightwear. Gran was taking a nap at the time, and as I ran my fingers through the silky feminine treasures, I just couldn't resist. Taking off my boy's clothes, I pulled out a pair of sheer white, lace-trimmed nylon panties, slipped them up my legs and around my waist. Even though they were a little large, they felt cool and slippery and feminine. There was another drawer with garter belts and stockings. I loved the look and feel of stockings on my legs, so I carefully pulled them on and with a little effort, figured out how to put a lacy garter belt around my waist and attach the tabs to the tops of the stockings. The clothes were comically large for me, but I loved the feel of them and how they made me feel like a prissy little girl. Next, I pulled a bra from the dresser and put it on. It fit loosely around my chest, but in the mirror, I saw a feminized reflection of myself. A beautiful, lacy slip was next, and the sensation of the fabric around my body and lace hem tickling my nylon-encased legs put me into heaven. I began looking for a dress, and found a cute, puffy-sleeved floral print. I pulled the dress over my head and finally got my arms through the sleeves. As the lacy neckline settled over my head and onto my shoulders, my head popped through and I saw Gran standing there looking at me. All the shame and embarrassment I had ever felt about wanting to wear girls' clothes welled up in me and I began to cry. But Gran stepped over to me quickly and gave me a hug and chuckled and said that I looked very pretty. I was still in a state of shock, and I think Gran sensed this, and she began to straighten the dress around my shoulders and waist and to puff out the short sleeves. "That's a very nice dress you picked out. Would you like to wear it today?" My embarrassment began to give way to relief as I nodded to Gran, hugging her tearfully, as I began to understand that she wasn't angry or upset with me. I had never felt so accepted and loved. Gran brought out a pair of pretty, low-heeled pumps and said, "These would go well with that dress. Would you like to try them on?" I slipped my nylon-covered toes into the shoes, only to discover that they were too large to walk in. "Well, we'll just need to get you some pretty shoes in your size," she said. "Let's go to the store and get you some shoes more appropriate for a little girl." I had never in my wildest dreams expected this. Gran's acceptance made me feel so happy. I gave her a big hug and said that I would like that. She added, "Those clothes are too large for you, too. Could I get you a pretty dress in your size to wear while you stay here?" I told her that I would love to, and after taking a few measurements of my height, waist, and chest, I changed back into my boy's clothes, keeping a pair of panties on underneath. Within the hour, Gran and I were on our way to Neiman Marcus. I still didn't know how we were going to pull this off, but Gran was pretty sharp and saved me from any embarrassment. Our first stop was the shoe department. We looked through girls' shoes, with Gran quietly asking me if I liked any particular styles. I loved a pair of black patent leather Mary Janes. Approaching the saleslady, Gran said that we were looking for some tennis shoes for me, and while the saleslady sized my feet, Gran made note that I was a girl's size 9. After choosing a pair of boys' tennis shoes, she told the saleslady that she was also looking for some shoes for her granddaughter, who wore a girl's size 9. If the saleslady suspected anything, she never let on, and I was too excited to notice. Gran also bought a pair of cute little white girls' ankle socks. Next stop was the girls' department, where we bought cute yellow jumper dress and blouse set. I couldn't wait to get home and put it on, but we weren't done shopping. Next stop, lingerie. I almost fainted as I realized that I would be able to choose from all of these beautiful, girlish panties, slips, and nighties. Gran even made sure that we bought a garter belt and 2 pairs of sheer beige nylon stockings. Finally, she bought a cute little training bra with pink embroidered flowers on the front. On the drive home, I could barely think, but I had never been so happy as I was thinking about my newfound treasures. Once back home, Gran started by having me take a long bubble bath and having me wash my hair. I had barely any body hair, but Gran suggested that I shave my legs and underarms. I was very careful and shaved with barely a nick. As I dried myself, I noticed that Gran had left a pair of lacy, pink nylon panties and a frilly, white nylon dressing gown for me to wear. I stepped into the panties realizing for the first time that these were MY panties, not some borrowed secretly from someone else. I drew the nylon and lace up my legs and over my waist. The waistband fit snugly around me and the soft nylon cupped my bottom, making me feel so girlish. I admired myself in the mirror, turning my hips this way and that, and reflecting that I finally had my own girl's clothes. After coming back to earth, I put on the beautiful dressing gown, feeling the luxurious nylon envelop me in softness, lace, and frills. I stepped out of the bathroom and Gran took me to her dressing table. She started by thinning my eyebrows into feminine arches. Then she took a bottle of red nail polish, saying, "All girls should have pretty painted nails. Would you like to wear some polish?" I had never worn nail polish, but envied girls who did. I nodded to Gran, and with infinite patience, Gran applied the first coat of polish to my fingers and toes, taking the time to show me the technique. After what seemed like forever, the first coat was dry, and Gran had me apply the second coat myself. Here I was, sitting in my grandmother's beautiful house, dressed in panties and a dressing gown, carefully putting on nail polish like a real girl. "The polish will last longer if you put on 2 coats, said Gran, and I began to wonder just how much dressing up Gran had in mind for me. After the second coat was dry, Gran had me take off the dressing gown and slip the garter belt around my waist and adjusted the hooks and eyes and back to fit. She threaded the tabs through my panties. Then she handed me the beige nylon stockings and showed me how to roll them into a donut and slip them over my toes. I drew the stockings up my leg and saw the reinforced nylon covering my toes and heels. The feeling of the nylon sliding up my now smooth, hairless legs was exquisite. More exciting was the fact that they actually fit. Gran helped me attach the tabs to the top of the stockings, and I could feel the tension in the stockings caressing my legs. Next, Gran pulled out the training bra. She showed me how to put it on backwards to attach the hooks, then turn it around and slip my arms through the straps. Every time I had worn girls' clothes before, they had been too large, but all the clothes fit like they were made for me. A pretty white slip was next. It fell to mid-thigh, just below the tops of my stockings, and the fabric hugged and caressed my body. I was completely encased in nylon and lace. I put on the blouse, and after a little difficulty buttoning the girl's side buttons, I was ready to put on the dress. Gran held it over my head, I lifted my arms and put them through the sleeves. She pulled the hem down my waist and it settled just above my knees. Gran straightened here and there, making sure the dress hung properly, then said, "Let's try those shoes now." I had always admired those cute little lace-topped ankle socks that girls wore, and now I was going to wear some of my own. I almost hated to see my pretty nylon and polished toes disappear into the socks, but when Gran turned the tops down, I felt just like a girl. Finally, Gran pulled out the beautiful, gleaming black patent leather shoes. I slipped into them, and Gran attached the little straps over the tops of my feet. It was done. For the first time, I was dressed from the skin out in girls' clothes that actually fit me. It was heavenly, and it felt so right that I couldn't imagine taking the clothes off. I turned to look in the mirror, and from the neck down, I looked like a slim girl with pretty legs. But from the neck up, it was still me. But what about my hair? I asked. Gran replied, Carolyn had a wig in her closet, come help me look. We walked down the hall toward Carolyn's old room, and as I walked, I felt the swish of the dress and slip against my nylon thighs and the snug panties around my bottom. Gran found the wig on a top shelf. It was light brown with frosted highlights. Gran took it out of the box and carefully put it on my head. The cap was a little large, but it came down past my shoulders and I felt the waves of hair tickling my neck and the sides of my face. That's better, she said. Would you like to try a little makeup? I had clumsily tried a little lipstick before, but nothing else. We went back to her dressing table, and Gran had me take off the wig while she showed me all about makeup. Gran showed me how to apply a light coat of moisturizer, then foundation and powder. That's all right for now, but we may need to find something a little closer to your shade. How much dressing was Gran expecting me to do? Next, she applied eyeshadow, then mascara, and just a touch of blush. Putting the wig back on me and brushing it out, she had me turn and look in the mirror. I saw a pretty young girl, with large, oval eyes, long eyelashes, big waves of beautiful Texas hair, and smooth skin. Now for the lips, she said, and handed me a tube of pink frost lipstick. She had me apply it myself, making sure I didn't over-apply, and I could taste the lipstick as I drew it carefully over my lips. She showed me how to purse my lips onto a tissue just like I had seen my mom and sisters do, and then she told me to stand up and look in the mirror. I looked just like a girl. I had never felt so good in my life. My panties and stockings, my slip, bra, and dress enfolded me in femininity, and the makeup and wig made me look like a real girl. I actually looked pretty. And for the first time, I felt pretty. I never wanted this to end. You look very pretty. Walk around for me, said Gran. The new shoes felt funny on the carpet, but I took my first few tentative steps as a girl. Do you like this? She asked, and I told her yes. Well, then let's spend the rest of the day with you as a girl. We can do girl things. Gran offered me advice on posture and how to walk like a girl. It was awkward at first, but the more I listened and practiced, the more natural it became. After a while, I began to realize that it wasn't just clothes that made the girl, but mannerisms, posture, and tone of voice. It was hard work, and my concentration was constantly broken by the feel of nylon sliding against my bottom, chest, and legs. But Gran was very gentle in her advice, and I was a willing student. While helping her dry dishes in the kitchen with an apron around me to protect my dress, Gran said, "If you're going to be a girl for the day, we should have a girl's name for you, don't you think?" I had thought about girls' names before. Joanne was close to my real name, and I thought that Jennifer and Stephanie were pretty, because a lot of my girlfriends had those names. After trying a few possibilities, Gran said, "What about Mary?" There was something in the simplicity of Mary, and the unmistakable femininity of the name, no alternate male versions, that just made it feel right. Mary. If I was going to be a girl, that would be the name to announce it. Gran immediately started referring to me as Mary, and it was like another layer of femininity that I gladly accepted. "We're done with the dishes now, Mary. Why don't you go out and play in the backyard?" The homes in Lakewood were fenced, with clean, well-maintained alleys in back, and there was no chance of anyone seeing me. I went outside into the hot Texas sun and began to play with some of my toys. It was all so different appearing as a girl. The toys were okay, but after a while, a part of me wanted to step through the back gate, or to walk down the driveway into the front yard, into public view, where everyone would see my pretty dress, shoes, face, and hair. Where everyone would see the pretty new me. Gran's driveway was along the side of her house, and I tentatively walked to the back corner. There was the same old driveway leading out onto the street, with a fence on one side and the house on the other. I had walked down that driveway 1,000 times, but now, it was like stepping into another world. I took a few steps, feeling the nylons rub against my toes and feet inside the shoes. Anyone directly in front of the house could see me. I walked a little farther toward the front yard until at last, I was standing at the front of the house. In the middle of a weekday, there was hardly any traffic. A car passed by, and the lady driving the car gave me a friendly wave. She thought I was a girl. My heart was racing. People saw me as a girl now. They would treat me like a little girl, delicate and soft and pretty. Looking out on Gran's neighborhood with its stately houses, old trees, and well-tended lawns, it seemed like a whole new, beautiful planet. To my right was Gran's covered front porch with a swing. I gathered up my courage, stepped into the front yard, climbed the steps to the porch and sat down in the swing. Now, everyone could see me. I felt excited and calm at the same time. Several cars passed by. After a few minutes, I saw the mailman a few houses away, making his deliveries and slowly getting closer. Could I take someone seeing me this way up close? He was slowly making his stops, and as he finished delivering the next-door neighbor's mail, I lost my nerve. I got up from the swing and went to the front door. Locked. I froze. I couldn't just run around to the backyard, the mailman was almost here. Turning around, I saw him coming up the walk toward me. "Good afternoon, honey," he cheerfully called. And I squeaked out a hello. He towered right in front of me. "You look very pretty today. Is that a new dress?" If only he knew. "Yes," I said. "Well, here's your mail, sweetheart, have a nice day." I took the mail from him with my nail-polished hands. He turned and went back down the walk. He thought I was a girl. He didn't even look twice. He thought I was a girl. And he had treated me like one. A few moments later, Gran came to the front door to get the mail and said, "Well, you've gotten brave, haven't you, Mary?" I told Gran all about the mailman thinking I was a girl and she said, "Well, of course he did, you look like a girl." Once back in the house, Gran and I sipped iced tea and talked. "Did you like being out where everyone could see you?" I told her yes, that it was scary and exciting at the same time. She mentioned changing back to boys' clothes tomorrow and suddenly, my face fell. The last thing I wanted to do right now was to go back to boring old boys' clothes. "Well, you can't just keep wearing the same dress over and over. If want to do this more often, we'll need to get you some more clothes." That sounded good. In fact, there's a lot more shopping we might do. Your wig is very pretty, but if you want to keep dressing up, we should get one closer to your size, and if you want to wear makeup, we should find the right shades to match your skin. What if we went back to Neiman's tomorrow to get you some more things? But I can't go buy makeup dressed like a boy, Gran. Who said you needed to? She asked. You have a lovely outfit, and if you practice your walk and posture, no one will think you're anything other than the pretty little girl you appear to be. What about a wig? If I take this one off, they'll see my boy's haircut, I protested. Let me work on that, she said, and went to make a few phone calls. Later, I overheard Gran having an animated phone call with someone, but I couldn't make out the conversation. I spent the rest of the day in my new clothes, playing, helping Gran with supper, and watching TV. That night at bedtime, I reluctantly took off my new clothes. I carefully hung the dress up in the closet and put my Mary Janes next to my other boys' shoes. I took off my slip, stockings, garter belt, and bra. Gran told me to put them in the top drawer of my dresser for now, and when I opened the top drawer, I saw a row of pretty pastel panties lined up next to my old jockeys. Gran had my new nightgown laid out on the bed. Gran suggested that I keep on my panties to sleep in, and she lifted the silky gown over my head and let the fabric settle around me. She tucked me in and the covers pressed the silky fabric against my body. Every move I made caused the slippery fabric to caress my legs and body. Finally, I dropped off to sleep, wondering what the next day would bring. Part 2 on the town. Gran awakened me with a "Good morning, princess," as I luxuriated in the silky softness of my new nightgown. Gran made blueberry pancakes, and I sat at the table watching morning cartoons as usual, except that this time, I was wearing beautiful lingerie. As much as I loved my new clothes, I was terrified of going out in public as a girl. I told Gran that maybe we shouldn't go shopping today. Gran let me decide what I wanted to do. "If you don't want to go, that's okay, but you'll need to wear jeans today." That sounded awful. "You really do look like a girl, Mary. There's no reason anyone should see you any other way." I loved her calling by my girl's name. "But what about getting a wig?" I asked. "I talked to a friend of mine who owns a wig shop." I explained our situation to her and she agreed to help, said Gran. "You told someone about me?" I asked. "Yes, sweetheart. Her name is Lois and she's a very dear friend. She told me that she's even had other boys who like to dress up brought into her shop. She thinks it's just fine that you want a wig and she wants to help." I was still apprehensive, and my embarrassment about dressing was starting to reappear, but I really didn't want to go back to boys' clothes right away. I realized that I couldn't keep wearing the same dress over and over, and I wondered how I would look with better makeup and a wig that was just right. Maybe Gran would let me dress like a girl every day, maybe for the rest of the summer. "Did you like dressing up yesterday?" asked Gran. "I loved it, Gran." "I don't want to go back to boys' clothes," I said. "Well, then, let's give it a try. If you get scared, we can always turn around and come back home," she reassured me. With that, I reluctantly agreed, and it was time to get ready for the big day. I took another long perfumed bubble bath and washed my face with Neutrogena soap, then went to my room and slipped into a pair of sheer yellow panties with lace at the waist and leg openings. The garter belt was next, and I was able to put it on by myself. I put my painted toes into the gathered nylon of a new pair of beige stockings and drew them up my smooth legs, then carefully slipped the tabs through my panties and attached them to the stocking tops. Gran provided occasional advice, and I put on the bra, slip, dress, socks, and shoes all by myself. "You learn fast, Mary," said Gran. "Let's see how you do with makeup." We sat at Gran's dressing table and she took me through the steps of applying moisturizer, foundation, powder, and blush. The eyes were a real challenge. She suggested only a light application of shadow and mascara, and after a couple of false starts, I saw that pretty face again. Today, we used frosted pink lipstick, and it gave me a younger, fresher look than yesterday. Looking at myself in the mirror, I knew that I wasn't going to cut my hair again for the summer. We reapplied the wig, and Gran suggested some perfume. She dabbed a little White Shoulders perfume on my neck and wrists, and the sweet, floral scent filled my head. Then Gran handed me a small black patent leather girl's purse. "You'll need one of these if we're going out," she said, and put my lipstick, powder, mascara, and eyeshadow inside. "This was Carolyn's, now it's yours." I took my purse and stood up, straightened my white dress, then checked myself in the mirror. Just like any woman. You're picking up on femininity fast, said Gran, and I felt that familiar thrill run through me again. We got in the car, and Gran showed me how to smooth my dress under me, then swing both my legs into the car. With that, we were off. I was riding around Dallas looking for all the world like a girl. We drove through Gran's Lakewood neighborhood, down Lemon Avenue and Mockingbird Lane, and finally arrived in Highland Park. It all went past my eyes as if for the first time. The silky feel of my panties and slip, the tug of the stockings on my legs, and the fragrance of my perfume were a constant reminder of how I was presenting myself to the world. I was terrified and elated, and I didn't ever want it to end. We pulled up to Neiman Marcus and Gran parked. Gran got out of the car first, came around to open my door, then reminded me to get my purse and to femininely swing my pretty legs toothier out of the car. I stepped away from the car, and Gran shut the door. I was exposed to the world in a pretty dress. Gran gave me her hand and we walked toward the store. My head was spinning. People were looking at me. Surely they could tell I was a boy in a dress. But no one acted strangely. I got a few normal glances from passers-by, and a few smiles from grown-ups, but no one laughed or pointed or acted like anything was out of the ordinary. Slowly, a sense of calm set in as I realized that in the eyes of the world, I really did look like a girl. The elation was still there, even more than before, but my fear of discovery was ebbing. I was a girl to everyone I saw. I loved this feeling more than anything I had ever experienced, and suddenly, my brain took over. I realized that if I wanted to keep this up, I needed to concentrate and act like a girl as much as possible. I began to be aware of my own posture, walk, and mannerisms, the way I held my purse, and the lilt of my voice. I realized just how much work it was going to be to unlearn all my boy habits and be a girl, but I was determined to do so. I had the first, flickering beginnings of a feeling of confidence. As we walked through the store, I began to observe other people, particularly women, noticing how they walked and moved, and I began to learn. Arriving in the girls' section, Gran mentioned that she was looking for several dresses for her granddaughter Mary, and the saleslady showed us through the large selection. We picked out a few casual play outfits, an adorable girly white summer dress with a full skirt, big red polka dots and black belt, a pink party dress with a petticoat and lots of lace, and a gorgeous white lace dress with puffy sleeves and baby blue ribbon accents. Gran accompanied me to the dressing room and I tried each outfit, stepping outside after putting each one on to take a few turns and to look at myself in the mirror. I decided to wear the white polka dot dress home. In the lingerie section, Gran stocked up on a dozen more panties, 3 each slips, garter belts, and bras, more stockings, and 4 new nightgowns of assorted colors and lengths. We purchased several new pairs of shoes, including some white Mary Janes, a pair of something called Spectator pumps with a high heel, a pair of open-toed slingback pumps, fluffy bedroom slippers, and even some girls' tennis shoes. I realized that Gran had taken me seriously and that if I wanted, I would be able to dress as a girl full-time for the rest of the summer. After loading all the new clothes in the car, we went to the cosmetics counter. Gran had me sit on a big stool in front of some lighted mirrors. There were rows and rows of cosmetics in back. The young saleslady was very friendly and did her best to put me at ease, but I was very nervous. It was one thing to be convincing as a girl from a distance, but this woman would be looking at me close up. As we looked at shades of foundation and powder, I became more comfortable. Testing some powder on my cheek, she noticed the line of the cap of my wig. "That's a lovely wig, honey," she said quietly. "Do you wear it often?" I couldn't think of anything to say. I must have had a deer in the headlights look on my face. She smiled gently and said, "It's okay, honey, you look very pretty. No one except a professional would ever guess. I'll help make sure no one will know that you're a boy." I gulped and felt my head spinning. "My name's Shirley," she said. Did I hear your grandmother call you Mary? That's a lovely name. She did this all while applying eyeshadow, telling me to shut my eyes, or to look right or left as she tried different cosmetics. How long have you been dressing as a girl? I told her that it was my first full day, and she said how lucky I was to have a grandmother that would help. I told her that I was staying with my grandmother for the summer. Gran was listening and smiled and said, I never thought that she would be so pretty. Shirley said, you have beautiful eyes, long eyelashes, and big, full lips. Most girls would kill to have a face as pretty as yours. If you're not careful, you may have a boyfriend before the summer is over. I hadn't thought of that, but there was something about the idea that sent a little thrill through me. Boys? This is a good daytime look for the summer. You'll want to add more eyeshadow at the edges of your eyes for the evening. Come by some other time and I'll show you some good evening styles, Shirley told me. Now, check in the mirror and see how you like your new look. She held the mirror up and I looked at my face. I was gorgeous. Shirley was right. She had made my lips look big and full. She had applied a light, daytime look to my eyes, with a hint of pinkish eyeshadow along with brown, and the mascara made my eyelashes look long and full. There was no boy in there anywhere. Just come back here anytime if you need any more makeup. Here's my card. Call me if you have any questions or need any advice. I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful summer. Shirley and I talked a while longer, and I promised her that we would talk again. Carrying my sacks of new cosmetics out of the store, Gran said, it looks like Mary made a new friend already. Are we ready to go to the wig store? I enthusiastically said yes. After my experience with Shirley, I felt very comfortable going to see the lady at the wig store. Lois was a very elegant woman, a little younger than Gran, and very friendly. I wasn't nervous at all as we talked out dressing in girls' clothes and the things that I wanted to do this summer. She had me take off my wig and asked several questions about the style I was looking for and how often I wanted to wear it. I told her that I wanted to wear it all the time, and she smiled and said that while that wasn't possible, she could do almost that well. We looked at several styles and finally settled on a light brown wig that fell just to the bottom of my neck in glamorous, bouncy waves. She took a tool that looked like a crochet needle and started pulling my own hair through holes in the cap of the wig. She explained that by pulling my own hair through, the wig would fit closer, look fuller, and would be much more difficult to remove. In other words, I was committed. Gran and I listened carefully as she explained wig care and maintenance. After finishing with my hair, she brushed out the wig and styled it. I walked to the full-length mirror and saw a beautiful preteen girl in a pretty dress and shoes looking back at me. I smiled and she smiled back at me. I was really living as a girl. On the way home, Gran and I stopped at her country club for lunch. The waiter pulled my chair out for me, and I smoothed my skirt under me as I sat down. I did my best to act like a well-mannered young lady. My pink-nailed hands grasped my fork as I ate my lunch, and I took care to take small, delicate bites. At least my mom would be happy with the improvement in my manners. A friend of Gran's came by our table and Gran introduced me to her niece who would be staying with her for the summer. Gran's friend said that her grandson Michael was also staying for the summer, and suggested that we could all get together for swimming or movies. Without thinking, I said that it sounded like fun. What was I saying? I didn't know how to face another boy dressed like this. When we got back home, we unpacked all my new clothes and hung them in the closet. Gran suggested that we pack up all my boys' clothes since I wouldn't be needing them for a while. I agreed, so we boxed up my old shorts, shirts, shoes, pajamas, and underwear, and replaced them with pretty dresses, panties, slips, bras, nighties, and other lingerie. Gran took the boxes of boys' clothes and put them in the garage out back. Dresses and lingerie were now my only clothes. Bright colors and silky fabrics filled my closet. Delicate lace and nylon filled my dresser. Makeup and feminine accessories, my makeup, filled the top of the vanity in my bedroom. I was excited but exhausted. I took off my dress and lingerie, slipped into long silk nightgown, and settled into bed for a long nap. In some ways, the next few days weren't all that different than before. I still played in the yard and watched TV. Gran and I still had breakfast and went out for lunch. We still went to the movies. But in other ways, it was a whole new existence. My name was now Mary. I was learning to apply morning and evening styles of makeup. I painted my nails, wore perfume, and borrowed my grandmother's earrings and jewelry. Every day, I wore panties, dresses, bras, stockings, and heels and carried a purse. I was gaining confidence and getting better at acting and speaking like a girl. After I watched Saturday morning cartoons in a nightgown and panties, Gran had her weekly appointment at the beauty salon and she asked if I would like to go along. Of course, I said yes. I wore one of my casual outfits. Gran had an appointment for a hairstyle and set. While we sat in the waiting room, I talked to Gran's stylist. She mentioned my nails and how pretty they were. We could make you nails even prettier by adding extensions. Would you like that? Asked the stylist. I looked at Gran, who smiled and nodded. The next thing I knew, I was sitting at the manicurist's table, getting my hands worked on by the technician. She attached plastic devices to my nails and applied something like polish, but thicker. After it dried, she removed the plastic and I had long, ragged-looking nails. She filed them down to smooth, feminine ovals that extended about a half-inch past my fingertips. After buffing the surface, she applied a base coat of pink frost polish, then another coat, and finally, a clear top coat. My nails gleamed and looked fabulous. My hands felt so funny with the extensions. I kept bending and unbending my fingers, then holding my hands out flat, admiring the new look. There was no going back now. Only a girl would have hands like this and I didn't have any idea how to remove them. While Gran was finishing her style, I sat in the waiting area reading women's magazines. Turning the pages was different with my long nails. I looked at the models and fashions in a whole new way, wondering how I would look in a particular dress or outfit. There were so many different styles. Wrap dresses, sundresses, suits. I liked the suits the best. They looked sharp and elegant, but still feminine. My daydreaming was interrupted by Gran, who had finished with her style. My magazine was open to a jewelry ad, showing several beautiful pairs of earrings. "Do you like those earrings?" asked Gran. I nodded absently, then she said, "If you would like some of your own, we could get you some." "Jewelry of my own?" "Of course, those are for pierced ears." Gran's stylist said, "We can pierce your ears here, Mary." Piercing my ears? So far, everything I had done was reversible, even though some of it would take some doing. But piercing my ears would be a permanent mark of femininity. What would my mom say? What would my friends back at school say? Deep in thought, I looked down at my lap, and saw my pretty long-nailed hands resting there, and my pretty nylon knees peeking out from the lacy hem of my dress. I loved looking this way. This might be my only chance to do this. "Does it hurt?" I asked. "Only for a second. You may not even notice," said the stylist. I looked at Gran, and she smiled and shrugged her shoulders as if to say, "It's up to you, Mary." Okay. They took us back to look at different styles of studs. There were lots of different colors and styles available, but since I couldn't take them off for at least 2 weeks, I figured the little gold balls would be the most versatile. I sat at the little table and the stylist applied alcohol to each lobe, marked the spot, and inserted the studs in an instant. It didn't hurt a bit, but I could feel the added weight to my ear. She installed the keepers, and we walked out of the salon with me wearing all new nails and earrings in the now permanent holes in my ears. Back at home, Gran said that we needed to get ready for church tomorrow. Church? Like this? Hundreds of people sitting around me? It would be your chance to wear that pretty white dress, explained Gran. The white dress. It was the only dress I hadn't worn yet. It was gorgeous, made almost entirely of lace, with a big bow and back and sheer puffy sleeves. It was beautifully feminine and made me look like a princess. The thought of all those people scared me, but at the same time, I wanted to be seen by them in that dress. I would wear beige stockings and my white Mary Janes. For the rest of the day, while I helped Gran with the dishes and laundry or watched TV, I kept thinking about how I would wear my makeup, or wear my hair, or what kind of jewelry to wear. It was going to be a big day tomorrow. Part 3 Church and more. I woke up Sunday, yawned and stretched, and realized that today was the day to wear my white dress. It felt like Christmas morning. I had breakfast, then took a bath and washed my face. I dressed in pretty white panties and a bra, then put on a garter belt and white stockings. After putting on my slip, I sat at my makeup table and with Gran watching carefully, I applied foundation, powder, blush, daytime eyeshadow, and mascara. Perfect. Now it was time for the dress. I stepped into it and slipped my arms through the sleeves. Gran buttoned all the buttons in back, then I pulled the single petticoat up to my waist. The dress flared out beautifully. Gran tied the sash into a big bow in the back. Setting the wig on my head and pulling my own hair through the cap, I did a quick brush out. There was no boy in my appearance at all. It was impossible to even think like a boy wearing this lacy confection. I picked up my little white purse with my makeup inside and we were off to Highland Park Methodist Church. It was a perfect summer morning in Texas, not too hot but getting hotter. The grounds of the church had always looked like heaven to me. We strolled up the winding walks among the big oak and pecan trees to the main church entrance. To all the world, we appeared to be just another well-dressed grandmother with her very pretty, well-dressed granddaughter. I was wearing a princess dress in front of God and everybody, literally. And somehow, I knew for sure that God understood. We stepped into the cool, air-conditioned foyer and each of us took a church bulletin. That's when Mrs. Newsom, Gran's friend from the country club, saw her and came over to say hello. "Good morning, Mary," said Mrs. Newsom. "My, you look beautiful today. Mary, this is my grandson, Michael." And suddenly I was standing face to face with a normal boy about 2 years older than me. He was dressed very well and was about 4 inches taller than me. Nice looking, for a boy, with sandy blonde hair. Something about being around a boy my own age, who was doing and wearing the things I was supposed to be doing, was making me very aware of my clothes. I couldn't figure out whether it was making me nervous or excited. Maybe a little of both. "Hi, Mary," he smiled. I said hello and smiled. He asked how old I was, where I was from, what grade I was in, all the things that kids talk about. He was very polite, and treated me nicely considering that he was a 12-year-old boy and I was just a 10-year-old girl. "Would you like to sit with us today?" Mrs. Newsom asked Gran, and she said yes. The 4 of us walked into the sanctuary and found a place in one of the middle pews. I sat between Gran and Michael. I looked at Michael's dark summer weight woolen slacks and jacket, his white shirt, and his solid-looking shoes, comparing them to my delicate lacy dress, nylon-covered legs, and white Mary Janes. I had worn clothes like Michael's for most of my life, but now, I was pretty. The service went along as always, and Michael held the hymnal for me when we sang. During the sermon, I looked around the sanctuary and let my mind wander. People got married in here. Ladies walked down the aisle in white gowns with long, foamy trains behind them while everyone in the room watched. They stood at the altar, said their vows, then were kissed by a man in front of everyone. I had never even kissed a girl, but I knew that when I was old enough, I wanted to wear a beautiful gown like that. We sang the final hymn and services ended. Gran and Mrs. Newsom chatted for a while as Michael and I stood around. We talked about nothing much in particular until he mentioned the Dallas Cowboys. Suddenly, I had something to talk about. I loved the Dallas Cowboys. This was in the days of Dandy Don Meredith, Bob Lilly, and Bullet Bob Hayes. Michael and I talked about the Cowboys' chances for the upcoming season and the loss to the Packers in the NFL championship game last January. He said he had never met a girl who knew so much about football. I told him, truthfully, that all the women in my family were big fans. I enjoyed talking to Michael and he seemed to enjoy talking to me, even though I was a little kid. A few days later, Gran got a call from Mrs. Newsom. She said that she was taking Michael to Six Flags over Texas in a couple of days and wondered if I wanted to come along. Did I ever? A trip to Six Flags was always a great part of summers with Gran. Before the trip, Gran and I were off to the store again to get me some cute little shorts that I could run and play in. I still wore a little makeup for the trip, but except for my panties and training bra, I was almost dressed like a boy. All of my practice acting and speaking girlishly helped a lot. Michael and I had a great day riding the runaway mine train and going through the scary Spelunkers cave ride, and we had no trouble finding things to talk about while we clowned around and just acted like a couple of kids. I liked Michael. Not romantically, of course, but I figured that we would have been friends even if he knew me as a boy. The days went by and I became more and more immersed in femininity. It became natural to get up, take a bubble bath, then slip into lingerie and a dress. I became very good at makeup. Gran was supportive and helpful, and was always encouraging me to do more feminine things. Even though my girls' clothes were routine, I never tired of seeing my polished toes encased in nylon, or putting my slippery nylon feet into a pair of pretty girls' shoes. The feel of my hair caressing my cheeks was a constant reminder of my girlishness. It felt right. My nervousness about being seen in public was gone. I simply was a girl. We saw the Newsoms regularly at church, and one day Mrs. Newsom mentioned that her daughter, Paula, Michael's aunt, was getting married in August. It was to be a big wedding, and they had everything arranged except that they needed a flower girl. The bride's nieces were out of town and couldn't be fitted for a dress locally in time for the wedding. Mrs. Newsom asked if I would be interested. Would I ever? I looked at Gran and she smiled. Mrs. Newsom said we would need Mary to be fitted for a dress, then attend the rehearsal dinner the night before the ceremony. She said that the ceremony would be on August 20th, 3 weeks away and just before I would go back home from Gran's. I said that I would be happy to help. The next 3 weeks were a blur. I was fitted for a gorgeous white lace, calf-length dress with embroidered pink flowers and a pink velvet ribbon tie at the waist. The dress had sheer cap sleeves and satin at the hem. I was to wear a flowered headpiece with a sheer train, along with 1.5-inch heel white calfskin pumps and white stockings. My makeup was to be a fancy evening look. When we went to have the dress fitted, I wore a simple casual dress along with a slip, training bra, and stockings underneath. Gran looked on as I stood there in a slip, nylons, bra, and panties, allowing the dressmaker to take measurements of my chest, waist, and hips. I was in a daze as I looked at the dress hanging there, waiting to be altered so that it would fit my body perfectly. On Friday before the wedding, we stopped by to see Lois, Gran's friend who owned the wig shop. Gran explained what I was doing and Lois was delighted. She agreed to style another wig similar to mine into a very fancy style with lots of curls. Saturday was the rehearsal dinner. I wore my pretty polka dot dress. I met all of Mrs. Newsom's family, including the bride's 5-year-old nieces. Stephanie and Jennifer were very cute and we spent a lot of time talking. They kept asking me what it was like to be the flower girl and asking about all the details of what I would need to do. They kept telling me how beautiful I was. I think they were in awe of me. Here I was, a boy, being looked to as a model of womanhood for 2 little girls. At dinner, I sat at the kids' table with Jennifer, Stephanie, and Michael. The girls watched my every move and imitated what I did. Since I was now apparently a female role model, I was extra careful to be proper, polite, and feminine, although it was difficult with Michael making funny jokes, cutting up, and just generally being my buddy Michael. I had a great time. On Sunday, Gran and I went by the wig shop to pick up the styled wig that Lois had prepared. It was beautiful, with layers of curls framing my face. We kept the new wig on the form and took it home. Gran and I had a light lunch, and then we prepared for my last big feminine adventure of the summer. First, I spent a few minutes touching up my eyebrows until they were thin arches. I soaked in a perfumed bubble bath for an hour, feeling the luxurious bath oils softening my skin. I shaved the minimal fuzz from my legs, making them silky smooth. After my bath, I applied body lotion to my legs, arms, and shoulders, then used a puff to apply powder all over my body. I slipped on my nylon dressing gown, then sat down and put a fresh coat of polish on my nails. I washed my face with Neutrogena and applied moisturizer and foundation. Gran watched closely as I applied powder and blush. She offered advice on the look for eyeshadow, but never stopped me. I breathed a big sigh of relief after I painstakingly applied liquid eyeliner to my top and bottom lids. Mascara came next, applied lightly on the inside, heavier on the outside of my eyes. It gave me an doe-eyed, almost Asian look. I put on one quick coat of lipstick, knowing that there would be time for a final touch-up at the church. Gran brought out my new wig, pulled my hair through the cap, and brushed and fluffed to bring out the styled look. Then Gran gave me a pair of real pearl drop pierced earrings. It was the first pendant pair of earrings I had worn, and I could feel them swinging back and forth from my earlobes. Standing in front of the mirror, I didn't look like a girl anymore. I looked like a childlike version of a woman. I was glamorous in miniature, and I hadn't even put on my lingerie. Gran had bought me some beautiful all-lace white bikini panties. A pink satin garter belt was next, and after threading the tabs through the panties, I sat on the bed and Gran handed me the white stockings. With now easy familiarity, I rolled the first stocking into a donut, pointed my polished toes in, and wrapped the stocking around my foot. The other stocking followed, and I drew the stockings up my legs and secured them to my garter belt. A new bra with lace cups was next, then a white slip. The dress was next. I stood in the middle of the room as Gran removed the bag from the store bag and hanger. She lifted it over my head, I lifted my arms, and Gran carefully lowered it over me. The silk lining of the dress enfolded me and the pretty sleeves caressed my shoulders. Gran attached the little neckline closure in back, fluffed my hair again, then brought out the calfskin heels. While I slipped my toes into the shoes, Gran tied the velvet ribbon at the waist. She kept straightening here and there, making sure the dress draped perfectly. We packed makeup, my headpiece, and a few other essentials, and we were off to the church. We pulled up behind First Methodist Highland Park and went to the suite of rooms outside the sanctuary where the bride and bridesmaids were getting ready. When Gran and I walked in, they all stopped. For a moment, everyone was speechless as they looked at me. Then there was a chorus of oohs and ahs from everyone. Paula came over and told me that I looked beautiful. Bridesmaids in lavender dresses and full skirts surrounded us, pressing up against us, and Paula and I were at the center, dressed in white. After accepting all of their compliments, it was time to finish getting ready. We had 30 minutes. I touched up my powder, freshened my lipstick, and applied a few dabs of white shoulders. Gran placed the headpiece, made of white and pink flowers, on the top of my head. I was given the white basket of flower petals that I would hold in my walk down the aisle. Soon, we heard the organ begin to play, and we knew that the groom and his party were in place. We all filed into the foyer at the end of the sanctuary, and the big doors were opened. I was to be the first of the bridal party down the aisle. The usher motioned me to the door, I held the basket in front of me, and stood in the door. I began to walk down the aisle. Just like in my daydream at church weeks ago, hundreds of people turned and looked at me. Just me. Dressed in panties, stockings, bra, slip, little lace gloves, and a long white dress. Me. With long, beautiful hair and delicate pearl earrings swinging from my ears. People whispered and smiled. "She's beautiful." "Who is that? Is she related to Paula?" "My goodness, that little girl is so pretty." "What a little angel." I walked slowly down the aisle, scattering flower petals in front of me. The groom and the minister smiled at me as I approached. I looked over and saw Gran sitting near the front. She gave me a wink and I smiled back. Mrs. Newsom blew me a kiss. Stephanie and Jennifer's eyes were glued to me, and they waved excitedly. I took my place beside the altar as the rest of the bridal party entered. The strains of the wedding march began and Paula walked down the aisle with her father. During the ceremony, I watched Paula closely. What would it feel like to be a bride? To wear a long white gown and be given away to a man to love, honor, and obey? Did I want that? Paula and the groom said their I do's and the ceremony ended. We walked back down the aisle, past all the guests once again, and I saw Michael giving me a goofy look. I smiled and stuck my tongue out at him. Later, at the reception, I stood in the receiving line with the rest of the wedding party, and I was introduced as Paula's friend, married to an endless stream of strangers, all of whom told me how precious I looked. Gran finally came, and she gave me a big hug and told me I had done a wonderful job. I turned and looked to the next person in line and found myself looking into the loving, happy, understanding face of my mom. "You're just beautiful, Mary." "I'm glad Paula was able to find such a pretty girl to be her bridesmaid," said Mom. I was speechless. Mom acted like it was the most natural thing in the world for me to be standing there in girls' clothes. After finishing the receiving line, I sat at the kids' table, picked through my cake, and looked over at my mom occasionally, and each time finding her looking back at me, smiling. After the reception, I said my goodbyes to the Newsoms. Michael asked if I was coming back next summer and I said yes. Then he gave me a hug. I was pressed up against another boy's chest and his arms were around me. I put my arms around him and told him I would see him next summer. Gran and Mom and I walked to the car. On the way back to Gran's, Mom explained everything. She had always known about my wearing panties, and before the summer started, had asked Gran to keep an eye out for any sort of similar behavior. They decided that if I did try wearing girls' clothes, that Gran should encourage me. Mom wanted to see if it was just a phase that I would get bored with, or if I would live life as a girl to the fullest. Her answer came when she saw me walk down the aisle as a flower girl. We spent a long time talking that night, with me dressed in panties, fluffy bedroom slippers, and a nightgown. Mom had done a lot of reading about crossdressing, was very understanding and surprisingly well-informed. She had even discussed it with Dad, and while he was a little shocked, was still my dad and was accepting. The biggest question Mom had was what I was going to do when school started. I gave that some thought. I really wasn't ready to give up my old life. I liked my everyday existence as a boy, but this summer had opened my eyes. I wanted to be Mary again next summer. Gran was delighted to hear that, and we began making plans for what we could do together next year. With that, my first wonderful summer as a girl drew to a close. We dragged out my boys' clothes and put away all of my beautiful girls' things. Gran said that she would keep them for safekeeping until next summer. I tearfully said goodbye to Gran before we drove back to Waco. It wasn't awful going back to being a boy. My clothes weren't scratchy or uncomfortable, they were just boring. But I was still me and still happy. Just before school started, I had to get my hair cut thanks to our school's dress code. I hated doing that, and I think Mom understood, because when I got home after my haircut, I opened my dresser drawer and instead of boring old boys' briefs, I found a drawer full of nylon panties. I figured that you might like to keep a little bit of Mary around this fall, she said. So I went to school each day wearing a little reminder of my time in Dallas. I liked my 6th grade teacher and it was good to see my friends again. I was busy with school and social activities. I even had the lead in the 6th grade play. As a boy, the Cowboys lost to the Packers in the championship again, this time in the Ice Bowl. Life just wasn't fair. Christmas came and Gran gave me a pretty nightgown and some new pierced earrings. Before I knew it, Easter came, the weather turned warm and it was spring again. I knew that in no time, I was in for another eventful summer in Dallas. Part 4, growing up, my wonderful summers in Dallas became a whole different existence. At home, I was just Joe, an everyday kid. But summers were special. I was surprised at how easily I made the transition from Joe to Mary and back again. Each summer, I became more immersed in a girl's existence as I developed friends and acquaintances in Dallas that knew and liked me as Mary. I enjoyed both of my lives, but I knew that living life on both sides of the fence couldn't last forever and that someday, I would need to make a decision. When I started high school, there was one big welcome change. Haircuts were no longer part of my school's dress code. I didn't cut my hair at all that year, and when it grew long enough, I began to wear it in a low ponytail. Physically, it was apparent that I would be a late bloomer. I had grown to about 5 feet minus 6 inches and still had a very slim, delicate build. Nevertheless, the first hints of adolescence were starting to become apparent. As my body began to show those first changes, I hated it. I guess that emotionally, my decision about which side of that fence to choose seemed to have been made for me. Mom and Dad and I talked a lot about it, and after weeks of soul-searching, Mom took me to a specialist in Dallas. He asked me lots of questions and gave me some tests, then referred us to a psychologist. The psychologist was very understanding and professional, and I answered all of her questions honestly. After several interviews, she explained that with my parents' permission, I could be put on a regimen of female hormones and testosterone blockers that would change my body chemically from male to female. She was very blunt, and warned me that while some of the changes would be reversible, others wouldn't. I would probably never be able to father children. I would eventually begin to develop breasts, and if I ever changed my mind and wanted to be a male, I would have to get them surgically removed. While neither my mom nor sisters were built like Jane Mansfield, the doctor told me that over time, I would develop definite breasts. She said that since I hadn't really begun puberty yet, my skeletal structure would develop like a female's, with a wide pelvis, narrow shoulders, and delicate arms and legs. I asked her how quickly the changes would happen. She said that they would be very gradual, almost unnoticeable at first, but that after a year or so, I would begin to show unmistakable female physical characteristics. I thought about it for a long time. I enjoyed my boy's life, but I knew that as Mary, I felt more appropriate. I felt more like my true self. I agreed to start on hormones in October. The psychologist was right about the changes being gradual. Maybe they had me on a low dosage. I took my pills every day, but I couldn't tell much difference at first. My penis didn't have the same sensitivity as before. It just sort of hung there like an object, not much bigger than when I was a kid, maybe even smaller. It wasn't so much what was happening to my body as what wasn't happening. I noticed my male friends at school getting bigger and bulkier and getting hair on their arms, legs, and chests. Their voices broke and then got deeper. On the other hand, I seemed to stay the same. The same light downy fuzz covered my legs and arms that had always been there. I stayed small and thin. I never had any problems with my complexion, while most of my classmates did. Around Christmas, I began to notice an itching and sensitivity in my nipples. I would lay in my bed at night with my hands flat over my chest, slowly massaging and kneading them. It relieved the itching and felt really good. By the time spring rolled around, my nipples had enlarged and protruded from my chest slightly. They didn't look like full breasts yet, but they didn't look like they belonged on a boy's chest either. I started wearing an ace bandage around my chest to hide them under my boys' shirts. By May, my boys' clothes just didn't fit right. They were too big in the waist and too small in the hips. Even my panties seemed tight. Mom talked about getting me some new boys' clothes, but since I was going to Dallas in a couple of weeks to stay with Gran, we figured it didn't really matter. School let out in May, and I was off to Dallas again. When I got there, Gran took me to my room and I got a wonderful surprise. She had made my room over into a girl's room. It was beautiful. Cream-colored lace curtains were on the windows, and there was a big bed with a lacy, cream-colored canopy. There was a lovely white vanity table with a lighted mirror, filed with cosmetics. The bathroom had been done over in pink and white tile. I even had a TV in my bedroom. I slipped off my clothes, got into the bath and began my practice transformation from Joe to Mary. The first thing I noticed was how good it felt to put on my training bra. It felt too tight, but it cupped the flesh on my chest and gathered and shaped it into small mounds. Even better, the bra covered my sensitive nipples and kept them from itching. My dresses from last summer still fit. In fact, they seemed to fit better. How could that be? I took off my dress and looked in the full-length mirror. Standing there in panties, stockings, garter belt, and a bra, I looked at my body. The changes that I hadn't noticed while wearing boys' clothes were now obvious. My hips were definitely getting wider. My little genitals were easily restrained by my panties. Turning around, I saw that my butt had widened. The panties framed and cupped my cheeks, and there were 2 little dimples on either side of my lower back. Definitely no boy there. The panties were uncomfortably tight, and I knew that Gran and I had a lot of shopping to do. Even more striking was my hair. I hadn't cut it since the fall, and under the influence of the hormones, it had grown thick and full, and now reached to my shoulder blades. It was parted in the middle, and without the ponytail, it hung straight and wavy on either side of my head. It was a mess. Gran saw me looking at myself and playing with my hair and said, "I made an appointment at the beauty shop for you tomorrow. I figured you could use a trim and style." A beauty salon. I had gotten my nails done there, and needed to do so again, but I had never gone there for the works. I had never had this much hair before, and I realized that I was probably going to be making a lot of trips to the beauty shop this summer. Gran said that she had planned a shopping day for us tomorrow, then a trip to the salon. It sounded great. The next morning, I brushed out my hair and put it into a high ponytail. I wore a casual blouse and skirt set as Gran, and I went to Neiman's. Short skirts, mini dresses, and pantyhose were all the rage. Maybe I was just old-fashioned, but I preferred stockings and garter belts. But I realized that if I were going to be stylish, I would need to wear pantyhose. First, we stocked up on new panties, slips, half-slips, camisoles, pantyhose, stockings, garter belts, and bras. Bra shopping was different this time because I had to be fitted. Gran and the saleslady took me back to one of the changing rooms and had me remove all my clothes above the waist. The saleslady took a few measurements and came back with several bras in different styles. The first one was a very simple sheer cup bra with no lace and no padding. It looked and felt great. It brought out the appearance of my little chest mounds until they weren't little chest mounds anymore. They were small, but they were unmistakably breasts. The next bra was much more substantial, with lace cups and padding. I attached the hooks in back, slipped my arms through the straps, and adjusted them on my shoulders. Gran told me to lift my breasts and to adjust the flesh inside the cups. I looked in the mirror. Oh, my! The bra gave me a set of real breasts. The flesh was forced up into mounds at the top of my chest. I even had a little bit of cleavage. The bra gave me a modest B cup, but the cleavage drew attention to my breasts and gave them emphasis. The physical changes that I had been going through were now obvious. It was a little scary, and I wondered if I would ever be able to wear boys' clothes again. We bought bras in assorted colors and styles, some padded, some not. Most had lacy cups and embroidered flowers between the cups. We bought a naughty little black bikini panty, garter belt, and push-up bra set that made me look very grown-up. The front of the panties and bra were black satin with embroidery and the back of the panties were sheer. I knew I wouldn't be wearing that to church. We moved on the juniors department and bought several cute outfits with short pleated skirts, a couple of body-hugging short dresses, and even some shorts and t-shirts. We got another pretty white church dress, although this one was more low-cut than any I had worn before. I stepped from the dressing room, feeling very grown up, looking in the mirror and admiring the way the dress accented my breasts and hips, when I looked over at Gran. She was holding a little black cocktail dress. It was very simple, low-cut, with a figure-hugging bodice. The skirt was made of some sort of diaphanous material that floated as the dress moved. It was gorgeous. I forgot all about my church dress. They'll be having dances at the country club this summer. I think this would be the perfect, don't you? Said Gran. I tried it on and it fit perfectly. Wearing it, I didn't look like a girl. I looked like a woman. With the right hairstyle, makeup, and jewelry, I would be a heartbreaker in this dress. It was obvious that Gran had decided that I wasn't going to be a little girl this summer. I was growing up. From now on, I was going to present myself as a young woman. After we finished in juniors, Gran and I bought several new pairs of shoes, including some very mature open-toed slingbacks and elegant strappy sandals with 2.5-inch heels. Gran noted that sandalfoot pantyhose would be good to wear with these shoes, since I wouldn't want the reinforced toe to show. Heck, I liked looking at my reinforced toes, but fashion is a harsh mistress. We were so loaded down with new purchases, we needed help to get everything to the car. We still had a couple of hours before my appointment at the salon, so we went home and I began to put away my new clothes. I put each new outfit on a padded hanger, realizing that these were now my only clothes. I hadn't packed any of my ill-fitting boys' clothes from home, and after 3 more months of hormones, they would be unwearable anyway. I was stuck wearing dresses. It gave me a little thrill to think that for a while anyway, even if I wanted to, I couldn't go back to being a boy. I arranged my panties, slips, hosiery, and lingerie in my dresser drawers. My new shoes were lined up at the bottom of my closet. I was admiring my new treasures when Gran came in and said, "Let's go, Mary, it's time for your appointment at the beauty salon." I was wearing a polka-dot summer dress and a pair of open-toed slingbacks with a matching purse. No stockings. Gran had arranged for the works for me, including a pedicure. We walked into the salon and were greeted immediately by Gran's regular stylist, Julia. She was a very elegant and professional-looking woman about 45 years old. Hi, Mary. It's good to see you again. Your grandmother told me how much you had grown. I can see what she meant, said Julia. We have you set up for the full treatment today. Follow me. I followed Julia to one of the chairs and sat down. Your hair is long enough to do almost anything. Let's look through this style book to see how you want to wear your hair this summer. We looked through a glossy magazine with hundreds of hairstyles, and I pointed to several longer styles that I liked. Julia discussed the advantages and disadvantages of each, talking about ease of maintenance and how each style could be rearranged for daily casual or more formal evening looks. She ran her hands through my hair, noting that it was very full and not too fine to be able to hold a style well. We finally decided on a very versatile long cut that could be rearranged to an updo for evenings and still be pretty and feminine in the daytime. She said that I needed a little trimming of a few split ends, but my length would still be well down my back. Julia had me lean all the way back in the chair, then sprayed water into my hair and applied shampoo. She worked her fingers through my hair, lathered the shampoo, and rinsed. Then she sat me back up and began to carefully trim my ends. After several minutes of that, she applied a conditioning gel, then began combing my hair out. Next, she brought out a tray of curlers and sectioned off strands of my hair, rolling each strand into one of the curlers. I had never had my hair in curlers before, and the tightness of them on my head felt funny. While Julia worked on my hair, a technician worked on my nails. I had let them grow out some toward the end of school, but we decided that extensions would still be a good idea. The nail technician applied lotion to my hands, then had me soak my nails in a thick liquid to soften them. While she worked on filing and polishing my fingernails, she had me soak my feet to get ready for a pedicure. Even though I had been taking hormones for several months, this experience was a shock. Yesterday morning, I had been a boy. Now I was sitting in a beauty salon, getting my hair, hands, and feet worked on by female technicians, all working to make me look beautiful. Julia continued with the curlers, some large ones at the top of my head and smaller ones just near my cheekbones. After what seemed like forever, she was done with my hair, at least for the moment. She washed my face and applied some goopy, opaque, greenish beauty mask to my face and neck. I was taken to one of the drying stations and given a copy of Cosmopolitan to look at while my hair dried. My nails were longer than they had ever been, and my toes, how did they make my feet look so pretty? Slender and smooth, with cute little red-tipped toes. When my time under the dryer was up, Julia brought me back over to the styling chair. She peeled off the beauty mask, and I was amazed at how cool and tingly my face felt. I watched in the mirror as she removed each of the curlers from my hair, brushing each segment out and setting it into place. She began combing and teasing, working my hair to look like the style I had chosen. She kept telling me about hair care and what I would need to do every day to keep my hair looking pretty. The results were amazing. I had a luxurious mane of thick, shiny, bouncy hair. When I shook my head, my curls bounced all around me, then all fell back into place. "What do you think?" asked Julia. "I can't believe that's me." I gushed. "Yes, that's some of my best work," she said. "Keep in mind what I said about daily care and you should be able to keep it looking this good all the time. Should I set you up for a weekly appointment for a touch-up?" I readily agreed. Next, Julia applied a casual daytime makeup look to my face. When she finished with the lipstick, I looked like one of the models in the ads in Cosmo. Gran came over and admired my new look. Julia glanced at Gran and sarcastically remarked, "It's so easy to be beautiful when you're young," and both she and Gran laughed. I was beautiful, in a way I had never been before. Gran paid the bill and with a "see you soon, Julia," we were off for a late lunch. We had lunch at a little sidewalk restaurant near the Lakewood Theater, then strolled together past some of the shops nearby. I couldn't help noticing that I was getting, well, looks from men. Some guy would come walking past, glance over at me, then do a double take. It happened a lot. Some men didn't even try to hide it, they just stared. This wasn't like a church full of people staring at me as the angelic little flower girl, this was just me sitting down having lunch. And it was men. "You're going to have to get used to that, Mary," said Gran. This was a whole new aspect of femininity that I hadn't anticipated. I was scared by the idea that men would find me attractive, but it sent a little thrill through me, too. As we ate, Gran said, "I got a call from someone asking about you, by the way." "Who?" I asked. "Michael." Part 5. Michael, Gran said, "I got a call from someone asking about you, by the way." "Who?" I asked. "Michael." "Michael." He and I had been buddies ever since we met at church during the first of my girl summers in Dallas. He lived in Tyler but spent summers with his aunt, Gran's friend Mrs. Newsom. He only knew me as Mary, but we had been good friends since I was 10 and he was 12. I guess I was the kid sister he had never had. Every summer, we went with Gran or his aunt to Six Flags or to baseball games or movies. One reason we got along so well is that we were both rabid Dallas Cowboy fans. He said that he had never met another kid, boy or girl, who knew so much about the Cowboys. Unfortunately, this summer's Cowboys discussions were going to be no different than the others. Michael and I would once again be lamenting another Cowboy loss in a big championship game, this time to the Colts in the Super Bowl. Michael was funny and smart and seemed to really enjoy spending time with me. I wasn't sure why, but he was probably my best Dallas friend, even though I had developed several female friends my age during my time in Dallas. Maybe it was that when I was with Michael, I could be a little tomboyish. I loved being Mary, of course, but my time with Michael allowed me to take slight mental break from all that overwhelming femininity and let some of my boyish side show through. Or at least as much as one can let show through while wearing panties, stockings, heels, makeup, perfume, and a dress. Now I was 14 and Michael was 16. I figured that a trip to Six Flags was only a few days away. I gave Michael a call and we caught up on the last few months. His voice was lower. He had made the JV football team as a safety at Tyler Lee High School and was going out for the same position in the fall. "So you're going to be the next Cliff Harris, huh?" I asked. He laughed and said he was going to try. It was great talking to him again, especially when he gave me his other big news. He had gotten his driver's license. His aunt was letting him borrow her car over the summer, and he said if I wanted, he could come by and pick me up to go get a burger. For some reason, this made my heart flutter. I had only ever gone out in public as Mary accompanied by Gran. This time, I would be out in public on my own, or at least on my own with Michael. But that was scary, too. This was almost like a date. On the other hand, it was my old buddy Michael. Our relationship wasn't romantic, we were just buddies. "Are you still there, Squirt?" asked Michael. "Yes, goofball, let me go ask Gran if it's okay." Gran raised an eyebrow when I asked if I could go out with Michael alone, but said that it was okay as long as I was back by 7:30. I told Michael to come by at 5 o'clock. I hung up the phone. Why was my heart fluttering? I looked at the clock and saw that Michael would be here in 20 minutes. For some reason, I had to run to my room where I freshened my makeup, checked my dress, and tried different pairs of shoes to see which ones looked best with my dress. Somehow, that heartbreaker look that I had been admiring an hour ago in the salon didn't seem quite good enough. But there was nothing to be done. The doorbell rang. Gran answered the door and I heard that deep voice saying hello to Gran. "Mary, your friend Michael is here," she called. I came around the corner into the entry hall and saw a man standing there, but the man had Michael's face. He had grown up. I was used to him being bigger than I was, but now he was tall, at least 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a narrow waist. He was wearing pressed khaki pants and an Oxford shirt. Did I mention his narrow waist? He saw me as I came into the room and suddenly got the strangest look on his face. Michael! Hey, Squirt! I ran up to him and gave him a hug. His big arms wrapped around me. He was so tall. The top of my head was just below his chin, and as I hugged him, I could have sworn that he was inhaling my perfume. My arms barely reached around him. I felt comfortable standing there like that. I had missed being with Michael and didn't realize until right now. It felt good to be there. To be there, in his arms. We hugged for just a moment longer than two old friends, and I heard Gran clear her throat. "Come in and tell us what you've been up to, Michael," said Gran. We went into the kitchen and had coffee, very grown up, while Michael told Gran all about school and going out for football, and taking the driver's test. All through our conversation, I kept looking at Michael, amazed at how grown up he looked. I had never given much thought to boys, but he looked cute. He kept stealing glances at me, my face, the top of my dress, my legs. Something told me this summer was going to be really different. Soon, we were off for burgers. Michael opened the door for me when we got into the car. When we got to the restaurant, he opened my door, took my hand, and helped me from the car. At our table, he pulled my chair out for me when we sat down. He was different this year, that was for sure. As usual, we talked about the Dallas Cowboys first. We knew that one of these days, they would win a Super Bowl, but today, they were still tomorrow's champions. He told me all about going out for football and making 2 interceptions in one game last fall. We talked about what we were going to do this summer and made plans to go to Six Flags. Michael said that we could go swimming at the country club pool, and I realized that I might need a swimsuit. I thought my body might be good enough to wear one, and reminded myself to ask Gran. Then I mentioned the dances at the country club that Gran had told me about. "That's great! Let's go together," he said. "I'd love to," I said right away. And then it hit me, I had just agreed to a date with another boy. Well, maybe not, Michael was Michael, after all. But I had just agreed to let him take me to a dance. That certainly seemed like a date. We talked easily for the rest of the evening, and Michael was a complete gentleman. There was something different between us this year, though, a feeling both frightening and exhilarating. I was very aware of Michael's masculinity. And given the way his eyes lingered on me, I was sure that he was aware of my femininity. It was so confusing. This was my old buddy Michael, but this year there was something else. We finished our dinner and Michael took me home. Gran raised an eyebrow when she heard about our plans for going to the dance together, but she gave us the dates for each of the dances and we decided to go to the first one, in mid-June. I talked to Gran a lot that evening about how things felt different between Michael and me this year, and she thought that it made sense since he and I were growing up. I could always be open and honest with Gran, and I told her my biggest fear, that ultimately, if things went far enough with Michael, I wouldn't be able to give him what a normal girl could. Gran chuckled and said, "Well, I hope you've been raised well enough so that we don't have to worry about that right away," and I laughed. Gran said that in the long run, honesty was the best policy. It scared me to death to think about telling Michael the truth about me. I wasn't afraid of losing him as a potential boyfriend, but of losing him as a friend. I curled up in satin sheets wearing a long nightgown that night, but I didn't sleep well. It was great to be back in Dallas again. I caught up with Shirley, the makeup tech at Neiman's, and she was amazed at how I was developing. "You're gorgeous, Mary," she said. "What are you planning to do this summer?" I told her about my plans for Six Flags, swimming, and of course, the dances, but it was clear that most of my time would be free. "How would you feel about working here part-time?" she asked. "A job? As a girl?" She explained that Neiman's had a summer intern program for high school students. I would only work a few hours each week, but I could pick up some extra pending money. The program rotated students through various departments where they performed stockroom duties and other grunt work with some sales responsibilities. The best part was that there was a substantial employee discount. I was worried about the paperwork, though. I couldn't use Mary as my name on the job application since that wasn't my name on my social security card. Shirley laughed and said, "Honey, we've had others boys work here as girls. Just because your paycheck says one thing doesn't mean your name tag can't say something different." I talked to Gran and she said that she would be happy to take me back and forth to work. But she also told me that I would need to be very responsible and do a good job. The next day, I dressed in my most conservative dress, I didn't have many, and went to talk to Shirley's supervisor. She was happy to talk to me, and wasn't at all taken aback by my true gender. "Oh, yes, we've had several male interns who worked as girls over the years," she said. "It's more common than you think. In fact, right now we have a male associate in our downtown store who dresses as a female. She's very passable, but not as much as you, dear." If Shirley hadn't told me, I never would have known. I got over my jitters quickly and had a pleasant interview. She asked me to fill out some employment forms, and I had my very first job. The first thing that was apparent was that I needed a new wardrobe. My clothes were pretty, but were either too casual or too dressy for work. Gran and I bought several slim, narrow wool skirts and long-sleeved blouses in white and various pastels, then 3 pairs of 3-inch heel pumps. And the accessories, I had never given much thought to brooches, bracelets, and necklaces, but Gran helped me get enough to have a variety of looks available. My closet was getting full. I worked 3 days a week. It was mostly restocking the backroom and tracking inventory, but during the second week, they allowed me to work on the sales floor. Being seen as female became second nature to me. Every day, I would get up, take off my nightgown, bathe, and slip into panties, stockings, and slip, then style my long hair, put on my makeup, then my outfit for the day. Heels, lingerie, and dresses became my normal existence, and I wondered if there was any possibility of me going back to my old school in the fall. On some days, Michael picked me up from work at the end of the day and we would go out to dinner. Gran mentioned that we were becoming an item. It worried me. So far, Michael hadn't tried anything with me, but there was a definite attraction there. Soon, the evening of the first dance at the country club arrived. I spent most of the day getting ready. After an appointment at the salon to get my hair and nails done, I came home to prepare. This tie, I would be going all out. I started with the black satin panties with a sheer back, then a black garter belt. Long, ultra-sheer black nylon stockings were next. My bra was part of a set with the panties and garter belt, and as I adjusted it on my chest, it pushed my breasts up and in so that I had a noticeable cleavage. A little black half-slip was next. Then I sat at my makeup table and applied a formal evening look to my face. As I applied eyeliner, eyeshadow, and mascara, I saw that almond-eyed, almost Asian look appear again. I looked good. It was time for my cocktail dress. It had a form-fitting bodice that Gran zipped up and back. The skirt was knee-length but looked shorter because the material was so light that it floated around as I walked. Michael's eyes went wide when he saw me. Always the perfect gentleman, he escorted me to the car and opened the door for me. The dance was beautiful, with candles and low lighting, and a live band that played mostly slow songs. Neither one of us was an accomplished dancer. I simply put my arms around his neck and he put his arms around my waist, and together we just moved to the music. I put my head against his chest and felt his big, strong arms holding me. He was warm and gentle. Between dances, we sat and talked and laughed like old friends. It was magical, and of course, it ended all too soon. Michael was quiet on the drive home. We sat in his car outside Gran's house and talked for a while. I told him that I had had a wonderful time. Then he reached across to me, gently slipped his hand next to my cheek, then behind my neck. He leaned toward me and put his lips on mine. "Michael, wait," I said. "I have to tell you something. There's something you don't know. Michael, I really like you." "I like you too, Mary." "No, you need to know something, I'm just going to say it." I'm a boy," I whispered. He sat back, chuckled a little, and said, "I wondered when you were going to tell me." "What?" He smiled as if he was letting me in on a joke. "Mary, I've known about you for 2 years. My grandmother told me." I couldn't process what I was hearing. I didn't know what to say. "Mary, it's okay. Your grandmother told my grandmother all about you a couple of years ago." My grandmother told me. I guess they didn't want me to get my feelings hurt. I admit I was a little shocked at first, but I've had a lot of time to get used to the idea, he said gently. "But, Michael, I'm a boy." "Are you gay?" Then he really laughed. "Mary, I date girls. If you want to know if I'm gay, look in the mirror. Do you look like a boy? You're prettier than any girl I've ever been out with." I still couldn't get my head wrapped around the idea that Michael knew about me. On some perverse level, it was like I had been cheated because all the worrying that I had done had been for nothing. "Mary, it's okay. I wouldn't have asked you out if it wasn't," he said. Slowly, I got it through my thick head that all my worrying really had been for nothing. Michael liked me for who I was. I was still trying to get used to the idea when he leaned across the seat, slipped his hand to the back of my neck, and touched his lips to mine. I went dizzy. All by themselves, my arms went around his neck. I could feel my breasts pressing against his chest. I felt his tongue and I opened my lips slightly, allowing him to enter me. Our tongues entwined and slipped against each other. We kissed and kissed, then kissed some more. After a few minutes, Michael said that it was getting late. He walked me to the door with his arm around my shoulders and gave me a long goodnight kiss at the front door. With a promise that we would go out again soon, I let go of him and went into the house. I lay in bed that night too happy to sleep. In an instant, all my worries about Michael had disappeared. On the other hand, the more I thought about it, there were other things to worry about, too. Now that Michael knew about me, and we were dating as boy and girl, how would I react if he wanted to do something physical? Should I stop him? Did I even want to? I certainly liked kissing him, but what if he wanted more? I didn't want to be a prude, but I didn't want to be a slut either. I guess I really was becoming a girl, because I was facing the challenges that other girls face. I began to think about next fall and how I would deal with school. My body was continuing to change, and there was no way I could go back to school even remotely resembling a boy. Mom, Dad, Gran, and I talked about it, and my parents agreed to let me go to school in Dallas in the fall as a girl. Dad, who was always Mr. Practicality, noted that I couldn't enroll anywhere as a girl until I got my legal status changed. The psychologist gave us her recommendation, and we got the legal paperwork started not only to have my status changed from male to female, but my legal name changed from Joe to Mary. Gran mentioned that for the first time, I would need to start looking at fall fashions. Life settled into a new routine. Work was going well. I enjoyed dealing with customers, and I still went out with friends to movies or dinner. I was accepted for enrollment at the Hockaday School, an exclusive all-girls school in Dallas. The girls there wore uniforms of little plaid jumpers and white blouses. I was going to need to learn to be a schoolgirl.